What do you say to yourself when you're going through this, where you don't know, like you're on the guard, you're on the lookout, there could be somebody shooting at you in the next minute?
You don't think about it because you have to be somewhere and you just want to walk as fast as you can. The fear is always there that you're going to get attacked, especially. And so everybody walks in a single file. It's not just some, buddy here talking all along the way. Everybody's quiet. The only thing that you hear is their footsteps, and that's what it is. And so you're walking, and sometimes after a couple hours you take a break. There's no water. You're lucky. I mean, there are some creeks, and you have to drink water from those creeks. I mean, but that's what it is. You just walk in the dark. You don't know where you're going or how much longer you're going to be walking for, and you just walk and walk and walk.
In one of the episodes that we had with, I keep calling him Master Farah, obviously he's your brother, so Akmal to you. But when he was coming in here, one of the things that we went over was his experience when he moved from back home, the transition from Afghanistan to Canada, right? Mm-hmm. And I was amazed at how he looked at things. I was like, it's not an easy experience to go through. But there were a lot, like I thought, I would have not had the same thoughts. I would have not had the same feelings or experiences. But sometimes when you're at that age that something is happening, you're not really, maybe it's awareness level, maybe it's, your responsibility level is different than his responsibility level at that time. You're seeing things. He explained it as like something he was just kind of like, it was like an adventure, like he was looking
like forward. A camping trip.
Yeah, it was like literally like that. I mean, yeah, there were some uncertainties and so on. But while he was going through that at that age, you're like you're a little older. You're a teenager at that time.
Yeah.
And so your perceptions, what you're paying attention to, what you're seeing happen is very different. And I never thought about that until we were talking about it the other day.
Yeah.
And, for lack of another word of what people call it, it's like it's a literally you're forced. Well, you're feeling like you have to leave. You're running for your life. You want to stay. Yeah. Right? This is your home.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, what happened was there were a few things that happened that sort of forced us to leave the country.
Right.
And one of them, my dad working for with the UN staff and having a lot of Americans and Europeans visit the country. So my dad would go to places with them to through the World Health Organization, through the UN assignments that they had there. So that was one reason, and he was always, being followed by the security or the undercover security in the country. They were trying to force him to give out information about these foreigners that were visiting the country, these high-level diplomats and everybody else that was came. So then, in a way, they spy on them for the government at the time. That was the one reason, and the other reason was that. When you become in Afghanistan, which is where I was born, you don't have to be a certain age to be able to be conscripted into the army or to be sent to the front lines. You had to be a certain height, and for us being a taller compared to my colleagues or a little bit than average, but not having that mental capacity or maturity to be able to go and fight in a war, my dad had to make a choice. Had to make a choice on that, yeah.
So that's interesting. First of all, the first thing that you mentioned was that your father was being, like, say, watched or, right?
Yeah.
Did he tell you this, or did you see it yourself?
No, we saw it ourselves because...
How did you see it?
So what happened was he would come to home, and then later at night, we get a knock in the door. And then my dad would go and check, and then there was, he would tell us, okay, he'd be back in about half an hour, and then be gone for like 45 minutes or 1 hour. And then he'd come back being scared because they probably threatened him. I mean, he didn't want to expose us to what they were asking and how they were asking those questions and whether they were threatening him or not.
How old were you at this time?
I was probably about 15 years old.
So you're mature enough.
Yeah.
You can grasp, like, there's a knock on the door, and this is not like
it's
a
not
neighbor.
Normal. Yeah, no, it's not.
This
normal.
is not routine.
No, it wasn't routine or normal in any way. So we would get a knock, and then we would go and be gone for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and whatever time period it was gone for, and then come back.
How often would something like this happen?
2-3 times a week.
What?
Sometimes maybe every night, and sometimes so they would come and say, tell us where you went and what did they talk about. So pretty much standard questions that you would try to...
and they could have gone to his office during the day and asked him this, right?
So
but they didn't.
Yeah, no, but his office was his office was on the UN compounds or somewhere secure. They were not allowed to go in.
Okay.
So that's why they would wait for him to come home. And what it is, because he was working with the UN and all that, and Afghanistan having a vehicle or a car is not a very common thing.
Okay.
But every day he had a chauffeur that would come and pick him up.
Okay.
So when they would see, that the fancy car or the new car comes and picks up this guy, and they would just come back and drop him off, they would probably waiting somewhere, and then wait for that, day to get a little bit darker, and then they would come to make it more dramatic.
So when this is happening, I mean, you're born there, you play in the streets, you go to school, right?
Yeah.
You have friends, you walk around, you go buy something for your mom when she needs it. All these things that happen
Sure.
when you're a kid, running an errand here, playing outside. Was there ever a time after these things started happening? Because one day you notice it's not happening, and then you notice it is happening.
Right.
Right? As these things start happening, what's your thought on, like, the situation?
At the time we thought that this would probably be, I mean, we're going back to, a few decades now.
Yeah.
And at the time we thought this was going to be a short-term thing.
Okay.
Maybe temporarily they're going to come ask, and, my dad would not give any information, and then they would just, quit on him or
Right.
give up on him. But it persisted. It went on and on, just 1 week and 2 weeks and a month or so, and then it was becoming unbearable, because it was affecting my dad in a way that obviously anybody who is put under the gun or being threatened, literally, yeah, or figuratively, would feel. I mean, so that it got to the point that, he had a choice either to quit his job and stay home, or find another job, or go through this process every time, go through that. And they would ask all kind of questions, which he was not willing to give any information from, as far as I know. And then the other risk that he was running is that, as being taller, but not being mature enough to be serving in the army, that we will be conscripted as well. So that is the other choice. So he had two choices. So even if he quit his job and tried to find something else to do,
right,
there was always the risk of me and my older brother, being, because that's how it was. Like, we would go to school, and on the way, you see an army truck stop and ask you for ID, and then it would say, okay. They would just ask as a matter of process, but then
this would happen on regular.
On a regular basis, and then they say, look at you, say, well, you're tall enough, get to the back of the
they
truck.
Would literally say
they
it.
will just pick you up from the street and take you to the.
Did you ever see something like that happen?
Oh, it took us a couple of times, but then they knew that we're not of that age to be in the army. They just let us go. They would just do it just for the heck of it sometimes,
Right.
So this was another risk that was.
So so this has happened to you
many times.
So when you're being picked up and you're being put in this, you're on your way to school, right?
Yeah.
It's not a plan. So you end up not going to school. So you end up in this place. Did you feel at first like, well, I'm serving my country, like a patriotic feel, or did you feel more like, what did you feel?
So this goes back to the time when Russians were in Afghanistan. So there was a threat, or there's a perception, or there wasn't perception, it was reality. We're invaded and we're occupied. So people wanted to stand up for the occupiers.
Right.
And for the most of period, people tried to be neutral on a lot of these matters.
Right.
And that's what it is. We just did not want to be serving first of all, we're not at that age to be able to serve, but
Right.
there was no honor. We were just scared. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of kids who are 14,
Correct.
15 years old that's
Right.
been picked up, and
Yeah.
and your parents don't know where you are,
Right.
and the next day you could end up being on the front line 600 miles away, being shot at by a bunch of people who were trained in professional, camps for these people to go and fight against the government and the Russians. So that's what it is. So there's a lot of fear in that. There's a lot of unknown. You want to make sure your parents know about this. And obviously, this is not easy for the parents or the families to sort of. And it has happened to a number of people, a lot of people, that the parents didn't know. By the time they discovered, the guy was dead. So his body was delivered to the house. So there was a lot of fear of that as well. And you just wanted to make sure your parents know about this. And you can't do anything about it. I mean, at the time there was no cell phones.
Right.
Obviously, this goes back in the 80s, and there was no other way of communication. So if it was lucky, if you run into somebody that knew you, and then they would tell your parents, but for the most part, you'd be out, you'd be gone.
I mean, I don't know if you can remember this or not, but like from the first time it happens, you're kind of like, I can't believe this is real now. Like it's happening. Did you?
So,
And then the second time it happens, and the third time it happens, is there a time where you're like, oh my gosh, this could be the one? Or was that every time? Was it different from time to time?
Well, as a kid, you always want to grow up fast.
Well,
It's very natural. So
100%.
when they ask you for ID, or they put you in the back of the army truck to take you to the site, to the training site or conscription site, and to the office or whatever you want to call it, then you feel a bit proud that you're grown up now. You look at yourself a bit differently. But then again, it happens the next time and the next time, and then you say, no, this is more serious than that. This is not something that you want to get used to, or this is not something that is enjoyable. It's a fear. It's death.
Yes.
Because you've seen what has happened in the country for the past 20 years. There's a lot of people in the family that I know of that have gone, and they're missing. Nobody knows if they're dead or alive.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are in the family, so that, not close family, but they are.
Yeah.
So that fear exists, and plus, going in there and trying to, the country, if you're defending the country, that's one thing, but to be defending an occupying, force or army, that is looked down upon in any culture or any country. So that's the other reason that you have that fear that you're going to die for something that you don't deserve to die for, or it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Or you shouldn't be, in fact. So that's what it is. So there's no time. Yeah, at the beginning, like as a kid, when you are growing up, then you feel that, okay, now I'm a grown up, I should look at myself differently. But then once you realize what is happening and what's going on and where they're taking you, then in that case, it becomes fear. It becomes, something that you just don't want to experience.
Yeah, it's one thing to have fear for a moment.
Yeah.
Let's just say you almost got hit by a car. It comes and it goes.
Yeah.
But every time you get into the street and you're walking to school, that fear is always there.
Yes.
That's a different kind of fear.
It is. So do you kind of try to manage it in a sense?
How do you manage it?
So manage it is one way. You try to be aware of your surrounding. And if you think that the army truck is there, you try to either go to another, street, or change the way you're going, or try to hide someplace, just to let them go pass by, and then you continue on your path, because you cannot stop going to school. And they would focus, part of the reason that we were not sent is maybe it had a little bit to do with age, but because we're still students, and you can't send a grade 9 or 10 or even grade 11 or 12 to because they don't have that age.
Right.
So that's what it is. You just have to manage how you go to school every day, and you have to plan it ahead.
Now, when you look back on it now, right? A lot of people, when they're going through the moment of living in fear all the time, they don't even know how it's affecting them, because they're not thinking about how it's affecting them. But when you look back on how it affects a person, or how it might have affected you, like it can come out in different ways. Sometimes we feel like we can't, we're not getting good grades in school, or we're a bit more, we're irritable, or we are not eating right. You know, like different kind of responses. When you look back on it now, how, like, you're coping with it, obviously, you're talking about how to manage your way through it. How is it affecting you?
Well, obviously our grades in school went downhill from
Really?
that point on. Yeah, because everybody thought, what is the point of going to school and trying to get educated
So,
when at the end of it, you're going to probably end up dead? I mean, there was a very high likelihood of anybody going to a war at that time, or be involved from either side, dying.
yeah.
So, you know,
There
that's
weren't many
what it
people
was.
coming back.
No, there were not a lot of people coming back. And I have, you know, neighbors and friends that have gone, and they all have issues now. You know, they have all kind of issues with sleep. You know, PTSD is very common, and a lot of them. Like, I have a friend that was a year older than I was, and we left the country, but he continued on. He graduated from high school, and then after that, you were obligated to go to serve in the army. And that guy had seen enough friends die, enough people die in wars, that even now, 30 or 35 years after the fact, he has can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes his family is destroyed, like his marriage fell apart.
Right.
Because of that. So that impacts everybody a lot. But then at that time, nobody cared about school anymore. It was just, school was a place that you go in order to, you know, delay that going to the army or trying to joining the army at the time. Because once you graduated, that was it. There was no other way.
So, thank you for like that detail, because to understand what drives somebody to leave home is important.
Yeah.
People don't just get up and leave. Like you said, friends, buddies, there's a lot of happy, good reasons to stay. Yeah. Plus it's your home, you know?
Yeah.
So to understand the motivations, to be willing to even accept that we got to go. Now, it's a decision you made as a family unit. Your father, your mother said, okay. Describe how that went, like when the decision was made.
So,
how did you find out?
From the time that we started having these issues, and my dad having those issues, he decided at that time that we're gonna eventually have to leave the country, because I can't. I mean, he made a big sacrifice. Like, he had his family, and I had my friends. And he has his brothers, his nieces, his sisters, and nephews, and everybody else that was still there. And none of those people knew that we were leaving, because you had to keep it as a secret. Because once the secret is no longer there, then, you know, somehow they had a very strong system in Afghanistan that they would find out. And if they do, you end up going to jail indefinitely.
Right.
And your kids would be sent to the, you know, the front line the next day. That's what it is. That was their punishment.
Right.
For those people. So we had, like, everybody had their normal life. I mean, it's very hard to leave the country. It's very hard, and you don't want to. But then again, you get it to a point that you have no choice. You have to leave now, because this is becomes a matter of survival. Yeah. And I had friends that I didn't want to leave with, and we were told not to tell anybody.
Right.
And
maybe not even talk about it as amongst your own siblings.
Yes, nobody knew. Like, one day, like, it wasn't just us. There was a lot of people that, you know, then you see that this guy stopped showing up to classes, and then, you know, one day he's okay, maybe he's sick. This next day he's not there. The next day he's not there. Then you kind of figure this out. Okay, he left the country. Okay. And that's what happened. And a lot of people just tried to keep it a secret. This is secret. Nobody knew about it. You just arrange it with a bunch of people that you trusted the most, and then just leave the country. You couldn't leave the country by yourself, because all the crossing ports. Afghanistan is a very mountainous country. You know, it has a border. One side it has Iran, to one side it has Pakistan, to the other side, the north, you have all these Soviet republics. At the time, they were Soviet territory. So it's a landlocked country. You have to go over the mountains, and there are only certain points of entry to the country that is sort of safety.
And they're guarded.
And they're heavily guarded, yeah. So you can't go on the road because they would have checkpoints all across. All
You can't take an airport from, is it
give you-
Kandahar? Like, already, where is it? Like, where?
No, so from Kabul. So from Kabul, yeah. So the capital.
Kandahar.
Yeah, you first of all, passport is not a common thing in Afghanistan. It wasn't at that time. Maybe it is now.
Right.
But you didn't have a passport, so you couldn't get a passport. And then plus, as soon as they figure out that you're leaving the country, they would just come down hard on you. You know, for even if you go, I mean, there was no such thing as going to see a doctor in India. I mean, most of the reason the people, or the reason that they gave for leaving the country was that they wanted to, like mostly the elderly, to go and see, get medical help.
Right.
And all that in India.
Yes.
That was a safe country.
Right.
Ideally, this is where people wanted to go, because Pakistan was another country that sort of housed and supported these mujahideen at the time, or these resistant fighters, or whatever it turned out to be.
Right.
A big mistake, obviously, was they were supporting them, so you couldn't just do anything.
Right.
With them.
So you're finding now that it's time for you to go. You're making plans in a very discreet sort of way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even then, as you're doing it, you gotta go, but you still don't want to go. Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is still your home.
Yes.
And are you thinking at that point in time about what life is gonna? What are you thinking about the future?
Well, the future was very unknown, and even us leaving was, to a certain extent, unplanned, because, so my dad figured out how to leave the country because he had some people that used to, that helped us out get out of the country. But then what after that?
Yeah.
What's there to do after that? I mean, once we crossed the border, and after a month, when we traveled a distance of maybe about 400 or 500 kilometers over the course of a month, what happened was we ended up in Pakistan, in Peshawar, in the downtown area. And the guy took off our stuff, whatever personal stuff that we had with us, and put it on the side of the road. And here we are. Okay, so now what?
So what, you were like in a truck or a bus?
No. So the bus and truck goes up to the border, and then from that point on, they're not allowed to go beyond that point, because the truck was an Afghan-driven driver.
Right.
So, and then you have to take a cab to take you from their station to wherever you wanted to go. And we just knew that the downtown area, or that had heard the name of the downtown area of Peshawar, which is out here.
Is it like, I picture it like, are you leaving in the middle of the night where nobody can see you? Like, how do you leave?
So here's what happened. When we decided to leave, because myself, I and my brother, who's a year older than I am, Hamid, we were at most risk of being, if they would catch us,
right,
they would automatically send us, to the army. So we couldn't go over the course of the time that we were there over the road. We had to go over the mountains with a bunch of people, with these mujahideen. We had to walk at night and go over mountains and summits and all these
Just
things.
you and your brother?
Just me and my brother.
So your family's taking another way?
Yeah, so just to get out of the capital, because the capital was now there, they had a security belt around it. So once you get past that point, then the likelihood of getting caught by the government on the ground becomes less. The only way that they would come after you would be to just bomb you with a plane,
right?
Or some other ways that they may have.
Right.
So that's the only way. So we had to walk for a few days. So we left a week before.
You and your brother?
Me and my brother.
Was this, you were planning for this? You knew you would have to walk through the mountains?
Well, we didn't know how long to walk. I mean, we knew that we had to walk, but we were not used to, somebody who spent most of his time in downtown Toronto, as an example, and then you take him to, let's say, California, which is mountainous, and say, okay, climb this mountain. That becomes very difficult physically, very challenging. But then again, we were young, we were full of energy, so we managed to walk it. And walk at night.
Your physical ability to do it, no questions about it. Like, if the army thinks you're good enough, like, so you're some way, but you're walking through this. At least you have your brothers. The two of you have
Yes,
each other.
yeah.
So that's some level of
Comfort, yes.
But you don't know whether you're going to make it over to the other side. You don't know when you're going to see your family, if you're going to see your family.
Yeah, because you are walking with a bunch of people who are heavily armed, and there's a threat of being attacked around the corner is very real and very possible. So, and the reason that they were walking over the mountains and going through these paths of the beaten paths is because it's very difficult at that time to look to sort of see what's happening. There's not a lot of electricity, so it's just not a residential area.
Yeah.
It's just mountains and deserts, and you just have to walk at night there to get to reduce the chances of getting caught and getting shot down or bombed at that time. And you have about maybe 50 people that
what do you say to yourself when you're going through this, where you don't know, like you're on the guard, you're on the lookout, there could be somebody shooting at you in the next minute?
Well,
what are you saying to yourself at that time?
You don't think about it. You don't think about it because you have to be somewhere and you just want to walk as fast as you can. The fear is always there that you're going to get attacked, especially, and so everybody walks in a single file. It's not just some buddy here talking along the way. Everybody's quiet. The only thing that you hear is their footsteps, and that's what it is. And so you're walking, and sometimes after a couple hours you take a break. There's no water. You're lucky. I mean, there are some creeks, and you have to drink water from those creeks. I mean, they were clean, I guess, at the time.
Yeah,
these creeks
still
coming from the mountains and all these things, but that's what it is. You just walk in the dark. You don't know where you're going or how much longer you're going to be walking for, and you just walk and walk and walk until the person, and nobody knows where everybody is going because they can't give that information just in case there is a spy in between these 50 people that are members of this group of mujahideen, or even us.
Right.
We were looked upon as suspects, or they didn't trust us. I mean, for the longest time, they did not trust us when we were walking with these people because probably had a bad experience. Somebody spied on them, or somebody had a device on them that somehow got detected, and these guys were wiped out. So for that reason, they wouldn't spread any news, and everybody, I mean, you're just staying at one. So what happens is you travel maybe 6 hours or 7 hours at night, or 4 hours, whatever the time might be, and then until you find the next village, and then you stay there over during the day.
Okay.
And then you wait for the dark, and then start walking.
And these people in the village are seeing you coming through. They kind of know what you're up to.
Yes, and that's why you were not supposed to walk in the village. You were not supposed to mingle with the people there. They were just their own quiet thing, and sometimes even spend the night in the mosque with nothing on it. So we had a blanket, fortunately, that my mom gave us just to make sure that if it gets
moms
cold,
always think about stuff like
they
that.
They always do, moms and moms. That we would walk there, and then we would have a blanket, at least something to have on you.
Would you say, I'm just trying to picture myself being forced to leave my home. Was there ever like a feeling of like resentment, or like this is not fair? That this is like I have to do this. I have to leave my home. Like,
of course,
something is unfairly being taken away from me, like a home. It's not like a candy bar.
Yeah, that feeling is always there. You don't want to leave. You just hope that the things would change tomorrow, so everybody settles down. Because you have your friends there, you have your family members there, you have your tradition there, you have people that you socialize with, you have your classmates, you have your teachers, you have your nieces, your nephews.
And you're one of the more popular ones anyway.
Well, I wouldn't say I was popular, but then again, rely on those people to live, and you have your friends. I mean, a bunch of people, we would go outside, when we were younger, and just play volleyball or soccer, and
you gotta give that all up.
You gotta give that all up for something that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Where are you going? And a lot of it were real, actually, some of those fears that I had.
Yeah.
Because once you go to the other side, and then you see how, you're mistreated, even though these are people that believe in the same religion that you do, and how, useless you are to them, then that.
What are you talking about when you cross the border?
When you cross the border and go.
So I want to get to that in a sec. But yeah, like just as you're kind of having to leave, this thought, you ever expected to see it again, or you're leaving it now?
No. So one thing that I remember, so the city of Kabul is more like a flower. What I mean by that, it's the city. It's like a valley, and it's surrounded by all these mountains. And when we were leaving, one of the places that we had to cross was over this mountain, which was the tallest, and you could see the city. And I remember there was a guy there. Don't remember his face, but he said, "Listen, guys, take a look at this. Look at the city, because you may not be able to see it."
Oof. Yeah. And you looked, eh? You remember that view?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it like a nighttime or day to nighttime?
Late day.
Yeah. Whew. So you're walking through this valley with your brother, and you get to the other side now. There's a sense of relief. You made it.
Yes.
Like, you survived. I was going to ask you, like, would you say, looking back on it, that had to be one of the hardest parts of this whole thing?
It is, yes.
I can't imagine something being harder than that. You get to the other side. You see your family? You meet your family, or right away, or?
No, so we had to walk, and then we got to another city that was outside of the capital, which was, by car was probably about an hour drive.
Right.
It took us 3-4 days to get there.
Yeah.
Because
Sure, you go.
we had to walk and all these things. So the group that we were with, they continued on to their path because they were going to Pakistan. And then we were supposed to meet our parents there.
Right.
And what they did was, because my dad was not of the age of conscription and my brothers were too young, they took the road. So they took the bus and they dropped them off at this from capital to the city that we were in.
Okay.
Or that village that we were staying.
Peshawar.
No. We're still in Afghanistan.
Okay,
We're just outside the capital. Yeah.
Okay.
So we had to get together, all of us again. The whole family.
With the family.
But it was a
Gotcha.
few days. Yeah, it was a few days, and we were staying with this family. So it was a few days that we had to wait for them. And you miss your parents. You've never been away from them. Then you obviously miss your parents.
Yeah. So you're staying with this other family. And,
Me and my brother are staying with this family. And then, now that I look back at it, I get a bit emotional. But
yeah,
we stayed with this family for a few days. And then everybody kind of came together. Everybody has a little world around them that they know, and they're comfortable in that zone. And they have friends and families that they have with, and they are not exposed to anything outside of that.
That's right.
And for them, that
call
is
it
their
the bubble.
Yeah, that's their world, and that is what molds their personality and makes them who they are.
Yeah.
And for us to look at it from a different perspective, or to understand, or look at their simple life, and at times people make fun of that, how simplistic their lives are.
That's it.
It is not fair, because he's comfortable. That's his world. That's his life.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. What's amazing is also along the journey, the points, the different points at which you stop or pause, and the people who we meet, it's, we pass them by.
Yeah.
We pass them by, but this person served us water. This person
did this,
served us this way. This person served us this way. And there are people that serve us that we don't even see. Like the person who swept the floor earlier on in the morning, or the one who came at night and swept it so that it would be clean. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they get no thanks along the way.
Yeah.
But because of them, we were able to get through here.
Yeah.
We'll never even meet them.
Yeah, I know. You're absolutely correct on that. We never meet, but they have their own families, their own lives, their own issues, their triumphs, their trials, their successes. There's everything in their life, just like anybody else.
Right.
It's just they are on a different level. And what I mean by level is that, their thought process is a little bit different simply because their experience and their perception of reality based on the friends and families that they have is different.
Right.
Or the job that they have is different. But at the end of it, everybody is just a human being. And, this is what it is. Everybody is out there making a world for all to live.
Yeah.
And that's if you think about it, I mean, there's a lot of people that you cross on the street, but those things were, in a way, I mean, we believe that was pre-planned.
Yeah.
For you to go through those and experience those experiences in order to be able to become who you are.
Even this family where you're staying, you know, I was just imagining, like, I was thinking, like, if I'm that guy, right? And he sees you, like, you're young boys, like 16, 17, right? These two boys come, we're going to take care of them for a couple of days, and then they're going to go. Now, before you, there were some more guys that came, probably. And after you, there were some more guys that came for that family.
Yes.
But they don't get to leave. You know, maybe they don't know a way out. Like, their story, their experiences, another one altogether.
Yeah. I mean,
when you spend time with these people, like this family, how does it go? Like, just like, welcome, here's where you're sleeping, you eat dinner with us.
So they were a very hospitable family.
Yeah.
I mean,
they were expecting you.
Yeah. I mean, obviously my dad, you had to pay
of course
a person to take you to the other side.
Of
and
course.
They probably got a little bit of money, but that is irrelevant.
Right.
Because
it's still a risk on their side.
It's a very traditional family. In Afghanistan, especially if you go outside, even in capital to a certain extent, but if you go outside of the capital, the education is less.
Right.
People are less educated, and they're very traditional families. So, you deal with men. If it's a man, deals with men,
right.
And men and live sort of the family. If there's any, guests that come in, men stay in one room and women stay on the other room.
Right.
And that's what it was like during the time that we were there. We were having, very organic food. I mean, it was, from their own animals, because that's what it is. It was a village,
right?
And they're basically doing some farming and on all these things, and there was no other industries.
How many houses are in a village?
Like maybe about 30, 40, 50, but it was a village close to sort of one of the main cities, which was the main city was not main city at the time. It was a smaller. In a sense, it was a bigger village kind of thing. Right.
We're
talking back a long time.
Yeah.
So we go in there and we deal with this gentleman that is there, and he has a gun on him at all times. And, we hanging out with him. And he, when we go to the shop, there's one shop in that village, and we go and he introduces us to those guys, and everybody... Obviously, you're new to the city, or to the village, and they look at you and they suspect, okay, so these are the people that are here, and then next day they're not.
Right.
So that is, I guess, common. Maybe it was common. I don't know how many people came before us.
Well, for them, but not for you.
Yeah, but even for them, that subject was never brought up. You don't want to talk about a lot of things.
Right. And
even then, you are always looked upon, under cloud of suspicion because they want to make sure you're not a spy from the government.
Got it.
Even though we're young boys, but they always
got it
because they have to protect their privacy and their the plan, the group that they are with, or that chain of events or chain of people that you meet along the way.
Gotcha.
Not to be broken up. So we were there. We had a good time with this gentleman. He would take us out for a walk and go up the trees or the middle of the mountains and, walk around here and there and go to the mosque, pray and all these things. So we were there until my parents came.
That's why I wanted to ask you, because when I'm talking to Akmal, obviously he didn't walk through the mountains, right? He didn't go through all of that. He's telling me that he's sitting in the back of a truck going up the mountains on the road, and he's like looking at the stars at night, and he's like, oh, this is like, I could think, because you know why? When I moved, I was a kid, so I could understand. I was like 7, 6, and I was mad because my dad left my toy car. Like that was what I was mad about.
Yeah, but anyways, Parents came, and we stayed a couple of days there in their family's house. And then this gentleman sort of knew that there was the way that I guess he must have done it in the past. So we had to go to the main city of that province, which is a different province right next to Kabul, which is called Wardak.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to go to the capital there, and then
What's the name of that city again?
it's called Jaldays.
Chaldees.
Jaldays is the name of the capital. There's a city in that, but the province is called Wardak,
Okay, Wardak. Okay.
which is to the west, southwest. So what we did was he took us to the city, and we just hoped. There's usually trucks that are being boarded, so a whole bunch of people that come from Kabul, or even some of the people that they want to take their families from that province, even or from that city, they would all gather together, and then they rent a truck
Got it.
with a driver. And then, I mean, we would rent their cars, obviously, but then you would get to the back of that truck and travel a certain distance.
Yeah.
So what happened, he took us there, and because there's a lot of sort of conflict between the groups of Mujahideen at that time, the guy who took us, I mean, obviously has a gun on him, but he is fearful of being attacked by the opposing or the other rival group of Mujahideen. So he's always has that in the back of their head, for whatever reason that was. So the first day we couldn't find any trucks to take us there. So the guy left. He said, "Listen, I cannot stay here overnight. You're here. You're stuck here. You have to figure out where to spend the night." And here, in this city, there's no hotels. Obviously, it's a village.
Yeah, I appreciate you just like actually willing to talk about it, because a lot of people skip over, and the lessons that you learn in these moments are the ones that really make you, like you said, right? Like, so, when sometimes you see something that doesn't work out well, like internet is down, and you're sitting there in the office and someone's looking at you going, or something goes wrong, you're like, why doesn't that bother you? Because like the relativity of the challenges, but you find that when you go through these challenges, Adib, right? Like, the resilience that you develop, the strength that you develop by going through this stuff, the other stuff that you get met with later, right? You have this now. It's a reference point. Everything is relative. That we, the other day I'm doing push-ups with some kids that have never done more than 20. You know what I mean? And when they get to 18, they're tired. You know what I mean? Whereas you're like, even if you've never done one push-up, you would push out 30, because you figure something out differently. It's one thing though that when you look at it, you got to be with your family. There's a certain amount of, like, I watch you with your brothers. I admire that, actually, the Farah family, and you're very, like, I don't know how to describe it, but I would say, like, somehow you guys sync up really, really well. You're all
We're not a perfect family, obviously.
Bro, but that's the definition of family. That's the definition of family, not to sync up well. That's not my point. My point is, like, I'm telling you, just as like a third party, when I look at it, I admire how the guys, like the boys, I know the boys, right? Like, if I'm not sparring with one, I'm sparring with another. I tell you, there's so many of you guys. It's like, but each one of you, I learned something different from, and I feel is like a mentor to me in a different way. But when I see that you guys is like, you have this, like, like you could do anything, you guys. And I think it's because you go through something, when you go through something together, what that does, the bond that you then have as a result of going through something, that's really, really special. I think.
Once you go through a lot of these hardships,
like you and I went through a real hardship yesterday on the golf course. Well, you see how close we become after we go through that kind of hell. But you see how it doesn't even compare.
I don't get choked up, off and on.
When you talk about my golf game, you might be crying about my game. But the truth is, when you go through something, right? Like, that's why you go through something with people. You travel with people because you go through stuff, right? But when you go through this, like what you come out of it with, like that bond, I don't know. I think it's really special.
Yeah. So, that what molds your personality.
100%.
Yeah.
That's my whole point of what I love to hear about it, because when people go through this piece, and we don't have to stay on it much longer unless you really want to elaborate on some of that, because as you're talking, I feel like I'm walking beside you. But the point is that there's a lot of emotion in that. There should be. You're being ripped away from what's valuable to you. You're being mistreated. Now what I wonder is, really where I'm going with it all is, I know you today. Like, I just met you only a few years ago, 10 years ago, maybe, we trained together.
Yeah.
A person who goes through that much, you talked about your friend who'd gone through another experience. Sometimes the smallest little thing can set a person off, because they're still hanging, they still have that in them. That, listen, that's not fair, what you just did. But it could be something I consider to be small, not fair.
Mm-hmm.
But, the response becomes very intense. But you have, despite being treated the way that you have been treated, forget about like when you went to another country, but how you get treated by the people in your own country sometimes, and the people at other places, forget Pakistan. Then when you come here, right, there's still all how you felt like you were treated when you got here, right? You could build up a sense of like, forget it, I'm just going to treat everybody like a spy. Like, like I'm not going to trust anyone. Yet you trust people, Adib.
Well,
why is that?
Listen, we're very grateful to be in this country. Honestly, I came at a younger age, went through school, and obviously you don't expect everybody to be nice to you. You don't expect everybody to be understanding of you.
Why would you say you don't expect people to be nice? People should be nice to each other. Are you like expected not to be nice? Do you expect yourself not to be nice to other people? You don't expect yourself not to be nice.
I guess some people gave other people the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
But some people don't.
Right.
And that is one important point that has to be taken into consideration. A lot of people, there's a lot of racism, a lot of bias in this country against every single group that is in this country. Even the natives have experienced, racism and everything else that has. And some people by nature are like that. They're angry at something else. They haven't been exposed. They haven't walked the walk of a refugee or an immigrant in order to be able to understand what they have to go through. And then again, maybe rightfully so, there are some people that come in here with a chip on their shoulder, and they don't care about anything else. They want to abuse the system or do whatever wrong that they have to do. And people usually look at those wrong things. They pick up on those things and develop the perception that everybody of that look or that shape or that skin color are all the same. Mm-hmm. But that is a generalization that is very wrong.
So when you you're hitting on a point that I think is really interesting. So like when you came over here, we can fast forward to this point here. You get here, and is it a thought in your mind exactly there that what it's like to be in a foreign land? You've already been in a foreign land before you got here. So when you get here, you're in a foreign land. What do you say to yourself to make sure that and what it's like to people look out at you, that you don't belong here and that whole thing. So then what did you do to reconcile that, to balance that? Either maybe your father told you something or you thought something, but what was your plan? You had to have had a plan as to how you're going to handle that.
We did not face a lot of racism or a lot of bias when we came to this country, because the city we came to Toronto, and it was a multicultural city already.
Right.
We spent some time in Pakistan, which was probably the lowest point. So to be out of that country and anywhere else was a blessing. So you look at that. You look at the positive of things.
Right.
As opposed to dwelling on the negative things that people do to you. And,
sure.
and that's what it is. So we were very relieved to be here. There were yeah, there's some bad apples in every pile, but for the most part, people were receptive. Canadians are very nice people, or I'm not talking about natives, but people who have been here, for the most part, they're very receptive. You just try to get, to live a normal life just like anybody else, and try to become a contributing member of any society.
Right.
I mean, regardless of whether there's Italian community here, there's Portuguese community, there's Indian community, there's Chinese community, there's all kind of German community, all kind of communities that live in this country, and everybody gets along with each other for the most part. But you just look at positive, try to ignore or not so much think about the negatives, and try to not get yourself in a situation that would end up, being an experience that you would regret later on. So, you just try to avoid those situations altogether.
When a person, you talked about generalizing.
What?
It's a good point, I think, that you make. When we have been generalized, because it can happen, we get generalized. It's almost like an eye for an eye, feeling. Well, if you're going to generalize against me, then I'm going to generalize against you, and over the course of time, this is not just like a one-day experience. This is like weeks and weeks, months and months of experience that you're going through.
Yeah.
And you just described like a week to me and how difficult that week was for you.
Yeah.
It's really intense. So the thoughts are also very intense. The experience is very intense. So then, for you to settle that down, to calm that, feeling, because something's wrong being done to me. I'm being taken out of my home.
Yeah.
I'm being mistreated. Yeah, there are kind people along the way.
Yeah.
But you do realize you're being mistreated. You do feel this. And then there's a feeling like you're going to make them pay for it. I don't know how to say it, but you're going to want to set the score straight.
No,
with the next person.
In my case, or in our case, what we did was we just passed that point. We look internal, and plus, when you have some kind of discipline in terms of doing some martial arts or taekwondo, that you're capable of defending yourself if it ever gets to that point, or at least be able to, calm the situation down and stay calming in that situation is very important. And at that time, I had practiced that a little bit back in Afghanistan.
Right.
And even when we were in Pakistan, we did have a club that we would train in a park, out of all places, because we were kicked out of this place that we were in as we were making too much noise, waking up and we would train in the morning. That's there, yeah. But when you come in there and you have that confidence, you just try to avoid those situations where that could negatively impact you.
You mentioned some influences of people around you, and one of the times I think we were talking offline from here, you mentioned the lessons you learned from your father on dealing with people. I mean, he's obviously was a professional in dealing with diplomats and that sort of thing. What would you say the kind of things you picked up either from watching him or from him maybe just giving you direct advice? Was there things like that?
My dad was not a diplomat per se.
Right.
Like, he wasn't a high-ranking diplomat, but he was there as a translator or
he was in the surrounding
area. So that's one thing. My dad was a very kind guy. I mean, he was a very kind person, and he was always willing to help the community or anybody else that needed his help in any way, shape, or form. He came to this country, and then him and a bunch of group of people got together and tried to build a mosque as an example for the community. They still, sometimes when I go and pray in that mosque,
right,
they still mention his name sometimes on the Eid or happy occasions, and they thank him for this. And he passed about 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, yeah. So you look upon that, because whatever happened to him, he never took it personally. He just let it go. Say, son, don't worry about it. Just let it go, kind of thing.
When someone says let it go to a teenager.
Yeah. Well, he didn't say anything to me. He would just say, don't worry about it. People are all kind of people that you're going to live, kind of thing. He did not see these things, but he showed us by his actions.
Yes.
And that's what he did. He was never confrontational with anybody. I mean, I remember back in Afghanistan, the one thing that I remember is, and I remember vividly, is this time they were preparing to leave, so I had a bike.
Yes.
And I sold this bike to this person that bought it, and to this guy. And then he comes back a couple of days later, and he broke the bike. And he comes and yelling and screaming and says, "Give me my money back. The bike is wrong and there's something broken." And I'm ready to start a fight with this guy. And then my dad comes and says, "What are you doing? What are you trying to do? It's just a stupid bike." And he knows that family, he knows that guy and how they are. He says, "Listen, it's not worth it. Here, take the money and go." The guy took the money, he left. He says, "It's not worth it. Don't do that. Don't fight over things that are not worth fighting for." And a physical thing or a bike or something like that is not worth it. I mean, not in that situation. We're so close. I mean, we're trying to sort of leave the country as soon as possible. So that's what it is. And I've never seen my dad get into any confrontation. I've seen places that was for him to say something or act in a negative way, but he always avoided it. Always, he had this calmness in him that he would never. I mean, he was volunteering with a whole bunch of group of people at this place, and some of those people tried to. There was one time that I don't know if I told you this or not, but they were like, he was like anybody else in that group, and they tried to look down upon him, and I was offended by that. So he didn't say anything to us. Like this happened between that group, but it came up in a conversation. Inadvertently he said that in a conversation, and I picked it up, and then I had to do something about it.
Because you're the elder.
You can't mistreat my dad, even though he's very kind. And he later on, when he learned that I did that, he frowned upon it. I say, "You shouldn't have done that." But then again, I had to do something because you can't mistreat my dad for crying out loud.
Right.
So that's what it is. So there's a lot of things that I picked up from him, and I think inherently, I don't know if it's genetics or not, you just have to be calm and cool about things for the most part.
So I think that's what's most interesting to me about your story is that we go through experiences, nothing even close to this, where we feel like we've been mistreated, right? And because of this feeling of being mistreated, someone's got to pay. Like, you can't mistreat. You might say, "You can't mistreat my dad. You can't mistreat me." And we want to fight. We want to set this, we want to set the record straight. But in order to get to like the bigger victory, like I love the story of the bike because it's not like you were wrong to expect.
Yeah.
Right. But if you fight on the bike, you can't leave the country. That's probably what your father was thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
or even if it wasn't for that, he said, "Don't do it.
Like,
it's not worth it.
This is not worth it."
Yeah.
So it's something else is worth more.
Yeah.
That's the point. Is that even in a moment where there's a mistreatment, the reciprocation of that mistreatment is not mistreatment. It's not even, retribution.
Yeah.
It's not even an apology that you're going to get.
Yeah.
But you say, let it go.
Yeah, let it go, because a lot of people that are angry about things or want to mistreat other people, is the reason for that is they have some other bad experience in life, or maybe they are in a bad position in their lives.
Right.
Maybe they have lost that sense of, control or maturity to be able to analyze the situation and try to get violent about it,
right,
or mistreat other people.
Right.
So like I said, we talked about this. Everybody has a story, and
right,
maybe his story is such that he cannot handle this situation. He has to get even with society.
Get even. That's
Yes.
the word.
And for him, it doesn't matter if the guy that he is trying to give in, sort of go hard on, is blue, red, black, whatever color. He just sees somebody that that is supposedly new to this country or an immigrant, and he want to let it loose on him, basically. And that's
so. How did? So you were willing to, obviously, at one point in time, over a bike.
Yeah.
Right? Another day, it's over your father being mistreated. So you know what it's like to want to get even.
Yeah.
To get even. But yet I see you often holding yourself, back from, trying to get even. What is it that goes on in your mind when you're like, how do you get yourself to say, listen, I want to get even, but I'm not going to get even?
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to yourself at that
First
time?
of all, it's illegal.
Well,
end up in jail.
it's not about, you don't have to do something illegal.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
it's just that you
How
have
do you let
to,
it go?
Yeah. It's just that you look at the situation. I mean, you develop this I would call this skill or talent to just ignore people because of what I just said, is that everybody has a grudge. Some people have a lot of stress in their life. Everybody does. And that reminds me of a commercial that I see. This cab driver is driving. I don't know if probably you've seen it as well or not, but this driver is driving, and then somebody else stops the car in front of him, and the guy is smiling, and the guy gets out of his car. It's a road rage, and he says all the things that is out there, all the nasty things that you could say to somebody else. And the driver is just shaking his head and just smiling. And there's a passenger in his car, and he says, look, all the things that he said to you, you're not going to say anything? He says, listen, you don't know what he's going through right now, or what issues that he has right now, or what problems he's facing right now. He has a lot of garbage in his life, and he had to dump it basically on somebody. And that happens to be me. And I'm not taking it personally, because if it was anybody else instead of me, he would have said the same thing. So this is how you.
And that works for you?
And well, for the most part, it does. Like I said, I try to avoid. I try not a situation deteriorate to the point where it gets to that point somebody comes and says, I just try to avoid it.
Right.
Try to resolve it. And at times I'm angry about some things as well. I just think about it, and I just to calm down. Many situations we've faced with, but you just have to just not get emotional about things and try to be rational about it.
Do you ever find, Adib, you've obviously got a lot of experience, you've done a lot of training physically, mentally, right? Do you still feel that there are times where I want to get even?
No. I don't think about getting even. Okay. Honest to God, whatever happens, it's not about getting even. Yeah, you say something to somebody if something is seriously affecting you in a negative way.
Yeah,
you do something, you voice your concern and try to rectify the situation as best as you can. But there are situations that are beyond your control. It's not worth it to get anything beyond that.
One of my favorite sayings I've actually heard, you just reminded me of it. It said, that there was one that used to be saying, it's to say, don't get mad, get even.
Yeah.
But then there's another one I heard saying, don't get mad, don't get even, get ahead.
Yeah, and that's
right.
Yeah.
So you feel like maybe you don't do this anymore, but you're now aware of yourself, like as you're approaching that point. Like something happens, and then, like, let's just say the temperature goes up a little bit, and then it goes up, and you're starting to sense the temperature is kind of rising on this.
Mm-hmm.
So do you find you catch yourself, okay, my temperature is rising, I need to do this. So what is that thing that you do to turn the temperature back down again?
You just take a deep breath and step back and just try to rationalize the situation. Oftentimes, there's all kind of people out there, and just being kind at the end of the day pays, for whatever suffering or experience you've had, with that experience. And helping people is one way to understand people's psyche and their experiences and the issues that they have to deal with. You understand? So you just step back and try not to try and avoid the situation getting to the point that you have to get even with people.
How would you say, when you look back at your experience that you had to go through, how has that helped you, if at all, in any way?
So it raises the threshold quite a lot. Once you've lost your homeland, and now I've been gone for about almost 40 years. If you think about it, close to 30-something odd years. I still have to count how many years it's been.
Yeah.
But I've been away from it, but all these experiences throughout life, being in a neighboring country and being, going through the situation where there's absolutely no hope is there. You don't know what is going to happen to you tomorrow. Whatever money your dad has, whatever saving that he had, that he brought, he's running out of as well, because you can't get a job. You're not old enough to get a job as an adult, but you at the same time, even you try to work someplace else at a mechanic shop or whatever the case may be, and you're not earning enough to be able to support. So there's a lot of hopelessness that's in there, and you don't know what's going to happen. You can't go back to your country, because if you do, you're going to be arrested, you're going to be sent to jail, and your parents are going to be not going to see the light of the day for the rest of their lives,
right,
for what they've done. They're still Russians, we're still in the country. So when you go through that process, then everything else becomes big deal. So you just, it raises your threshold so much that everything else is a blessing. Just driving something simple, just going out for a walk with my wife, or just looking at my kids, is a blessing for me, because they don't have to go through all that. They were born in this country, and they were raised in this country, but I still try to instill the hard work in them, to make sure that they are raised with the same values that I have. But obviously the threshold is a lot lower than mine in some cases, because they are adjusted to this country. Not that they're trying to go and get even with people, but overall they have a different experience from life than I do.
Of course, it sort of last sort of bit that I'd love to hear you share on this is, you say it raises your threshold.
Yeah.
It builds your resilience.
Yeah.
Right. That's a positive thing.
Absolutely.
But while you're going through it, you're not looking at yourself 40 years from now, looking back on it, going, this is going to raise my threshold. Mm-hmm. So somebody who's going through it right now, and they're feeling a sense of like hopelessness. Yeah. Things are difficult for them. What do you say to them to give them hope? They're angry about something maybe, or they're feeling that they're being mistreated. What do you say to them?
Well, what I do is, for a long time, I always wanted to know what people do, people who are, some of the regrets that they've had when they are in their close to dying, like those people that are dying. And if you think about it, they look upon those experiences and they say, this is where my character was built. These experiences is not the happy occasions. It's not the positive so much that builds your character. It's all these sufferings that you have to go through, that a person's, and I don't want to say man or woman,
sure,
but a person's character is developed and is molded. Because once you go through that, then everything else becomes irrelevant. And none of those people say, oh, I wish I had gotten even at that point with that person. None of them talk about it, but they look upon those times and they say, I went through this, but I did this. Something positive came. And that's what I'm saying, that if one door closes, another one opens. It is very true. It is true. If somebody's going through those things, think about it, that this is not going to last for a long time. There is going to be a tomorrow. There's always a day, the daylight after darkness. There's a daylight after every night. So, what you have to go through, because society, your destiny, whatever you want to call it, has designed this for you. You just have to work through this in order to become a better person tomorrow. And nothing lasts forever. It's up and down. Life is all about up and down. Nobody, was born and never went through it. Even some of the richest people, some of the poorest people, some of the richest families that were 100 years ago, they don't have the kind of money that they did because of whatever experience that they had. Once you go generations, one generation go through hardship, make all the money, and then the next generation is not working as hard as their parents. And then the next generation, because everything was given to them on a silver platter, or they're not pushing themselves, they lose all that wealth. And then you have people that are going through rough times and blaming somebody else for it.
Right.
So what I would say to those people is just take a step back and just, know that there's going to be a daylight after that.
That's exactly the I feel like the hardest part, because you get tired.
Yeah.
You're tired now. You know, you're broken. You're tired. Where do you find what do you say? Like, you're tired. How do you tell a tired person to take a next step?
You know, we can get into discussion about religion and all these things.
No, whatever you would say.
Or spirituality.
It's whatever you think.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what you would say when you're tired. Because you were tired.
Yeah, well, we were, but then again, you always have that hope. And a lot of these hopes, especially in those moments that you're broken, comes from your spirituality.
Okay.
You know, you have to have some kind of value system, some kind of spirituality in order for you to rely on, especially in these hard moments. People, when they have a lot of money or they have the best life, they usually forget about that. But people who are going through rough times, they are looking upon somebody to give them that hope. And that's what religion, whatever religion that may happen to be, is going to give them. They have to rely on that and hope. And that's the hope comes from that part. That comes from that God or Allah or Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, or Guru, whatever that may happen to be, comes from that. So you have to have that spirituality. You have to have some discipline in life. And that discipline and that spirituality gives you a lot of hope. This is what I believe, and this is what I have experienced. Like I said, we went through all of that. And the only hope that we had was, you know, your belief system, that one day, you know, God is going to look upon you and things will change. And it eventually did for us. You know, my story compared to some other people are probably just, you know, big deal. Because I know a lot of people that have gone through a lot worse than I have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just about how much it impacts you, how you perceive things. And I didn't know I had so much emotions in me about my experience of leaving the country that I got choked up a couple of times, you know. But it does when you look back upon it and you see what you went through, and it just affects you. And even that was not forever, you know. Nothing stays forever, and that's what it is. You have to have a hope, a religion, or some sort of spirituality to be able to survive those rough times.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I really do. I only got as far as that city with you. I want to hear after that. One day I want to pick it up another time, because at every one of those junctures, I keep thinking, there's another lesson. There's another lesson. That's another moment to be grateful for. That's another moment to be, right? Like you think about it. Yeah. But you're just sharing that. It means a lot to me. I really, really appreciate it.
I hope.
100%. In fact, I think we'll do this. I want to do this again and learn some more. But I just want to say thank you more than anything else for today.
I'm glad to be here. It was interesting. You delved into my emotions a little bit here, and then brought back some memories. I mean, like I said, there's people that have gone. They've lost their family members along the way. They've lost their lives along the way, and fortunately, we all made it out alive. But this journey, leaving from home to coming to a different country, was, now that I look back upon it, is painful in a way. It has some bad emotions.
Now, if you would not wish a hardship on anyone.
No.
Ever. But what you have gone through, like you said, built your character.
Yeah.
If you had a choice not to go through that and not have the character that you'd built, would you be willing to go through a hardship to build your character to what you have today?
I don't think it's had a choice. It's a matter of choice, that whether you want it upon you. I mean, nobody wishes to go through any rough times.
Right.
Everyone wants everything to be handed over to them in a silver plate.
Right.
We went through all of that. We were close family, me and my brothers and my parents and all these things, and brought us closer. I mean, we grew up together. We came to this country. We didn't have anybody to go or visit, and it was just our family.
Yeah.
And we put our minds together. My older brother, he worked very hard. He quit university and started, working very hard, putting more hours at work, and then saving enough money for us to sort of build next business that we bought, and from that, came all these other things that I do. And throughout my business experience, I built a company from scratch, from zero. And along the way, I've always tried to be very kind and helpful to a lot of people when I wasn't even helped.
Right.
When I needed some information, people hide these things. People don't give secrets. And I tell you a story. There was one gentleman that was working part of, so our business, we distribution this company, and our delivery system is outsourced. So we hire all these brokers and trucking companies to do the job for us because it's too risky and too cumbersome. So this gentleman was working there in that company for a while, and then after a while he quit, and he came to me and he said, "Listen, I'm no longer working for this company. Would you please help me and use my services?" Yeah, no problem. So I just, it was a pleasure for me to be dealing with this guy. I've known him for so long, and we continued on, and his bills were paid on time and everything else. And then after a while, his truck couldn't handle the weight and all these things. So he said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore, but thank you very much." He left. And then 10 years after the fact, I get a call from this guy and he says, "Listen, you're invited to my kid's wedding." Mm-hmm. And I've only known this guy, whenever he's there, we talk, we chat, and, being kind and all these things. I was surprised to know, I don't even know this guy or his family, and he's inviting me to a wedding. Mm. And when we attended the wedding, the guy said, "Listen, you don't know what you've done for me."
It's a real experience to be able to break that cycle. And when you put the effort into doing that, we consider the breaking that cycle, that's not easy. You've done it. You've been through the whole experience, all 360, right? You can see it from every angle now. And for you to share these pieces of it really helps me, helps a lot of people to understand that there is a way to do it, right?
Well, you always have to keep in mind that what goes around comes around. Mm. Just because I have a lot of experience, bad experience, business experience, that I try to go meet with these customers, and they screamed and yelled at me, kicked me out of their office simply because whatever the reason was, the product was not what they were looking for, but that's not how you handle the situation. And I looked at it, and I still have those scars and emotional scars, basically.
Right.
But you have to get that past that point. You can't just dwell on those things, Anybody try to open up a business has to go through a lot of bad experiences. All these entrepreneurs, when they start a business, for the most part, if they come from a wealthy family, then maybe they have it a little bit easier. But somebody who comes from a not wealthy company and they build something, they have a lot of scars to tell you. There's a lot of, bias against them. It seems that some people cannot stand your success. Mm. They cannot see you being successful. Mm. Whatever reason that is, either they couldn't do it themselves, or they're negative about things, or they just don't like you. Mm. But that, you should have a very thick skin for that. Especially any kind of business that you want to do.
So we're gonna have to do a session on the business startup another day. I think that there's a lot to be learned from. That's what I'm saying. Like, you've got these different experiences that I really, really would love to hear.
Promise me you're not gonna get me choked up.
Well, if you want to get choked up, you can get choked up. But I was really upset about some of my shots yesterday. So are you. Yeah, but you held it together. Well, and we got through it. No, honestly, Adib, thank you.